This is why I say December of 07 was a pinnacle of information from the city. A staff member, Jeff Corwin, came to me and he was visibly upset. In the middle of September, I forgot exactly what it was. He stated that there was an issue with chlorine leak at the downtown wastewater treatment plant, and the city didn't involve him in the police report and like that, and he didn't get a copy of the police report. Now, I'd already had the issue with the spill and the water issues and the money issues. Now I got another thing compounded. I mean, this was just an avalanche. Well, I didn't understand what he was referring to, but he knew that I was doing these other things. I was logging the other things, and he knew I had friends in Washington, D.C. Well, he was trying to use me to get back at us staff members he didn't like. But I knew what he was doing. It was okay, because as long as it protected the public. What we found out was somebody in July of 07 had attacked the city wastewater treatment plant downtown, and the city didn't report it properly. Evidently, somebody tried to burn down our chlorine holding storage shed that was treating wastewater leaving the ravine downtown, and they tried to burn it down because they knew that would create an incident with newspapers report it and it get attention to the groundwater pollution that the local residents felt that was caused by the city's old style treatment process. Well, that was an issue for years, but the police report, when I got a copy of the police report, it showed clearly that they weren't describing the facility as a government facility. They were kind of, the police report was kind of vague on what it was, and it was pretty clear to me and other staff members that there was a cover-up of the issue. Now, that would be justified for terrorist reasons. We don't want terrorists to go in there and attack our facility. We don't know how. Well, we still have to report it. We still have to report, so we don't discuss where it was at, how they got in, anything like that. We don't discuss issues like that. But whenever a chlorine leak is released to this community, and this was, I didn't discover till a year later, there's actually 3,000 pounds of chlorine gas that was released. Well, that went in the atmosphere within, about a mile and a half of the city, and chlorine gas goes to the ground, so there wasn't too much hazard. But the fact that it wasn't reported to anybody, ADQ wasn't aware of the chlorine leak, and it wasn't even in the police report of chlorine leak. Jeff Corwin was upset about this because it was under his realm of control, but he lost control at this point. The city management, upper management, took over. Well, I knew this was a serious matter. Someone attacked a public facility. I had just received the terrorist training desk from the state. I was to be the training officer for the water department in anti-terrorist procedure, so I had the training desk. So I was, I was filling multiple roles because it's a small city. Well, after going over the training desk 2 weeks earlier, I knew what I had to do. I had to report this to the federal authorities. So I knew there was an FBI office in Havasu, so I wrote a letter to the FBI agent down in Havasu, and I informed him about the maybe attack, because I wanted to protect other communities. This might be just the local residents upset at groundwater pollution, or it might be a terrorist plot. Who knows? It wasn't my privy to make that decision. So I turned it over to the Bureau. Like most federal agencies, they're swamped with work, and actually they did pick up the incident instantly, and they don't tell you, when you report something to the FBI, they don't tell you what they're doing. They're not going to tell you. But they got it. I found out later that the head of the Phoenix office took it very seriously, and they took corrective action. I didn't find out till months and months later, almost a year later, what action they took. But be assured, the Bureau does do their job. People don't think if you write a letter, no, they actually do. They have a log. They know what's going on. They just don't let you know that. So one of the corrective actions that FBI helped with was that they helped ADQ, they forced ADQ into having special training in Phoenix and in Flagstaff, our local area, for water operators revolving chlorine leaks. Okay, so now that was one issue. So I'm discovering all these little bad things going on, all in this short amount of time. It was just overwhelming. The city evidently found out about the FBI letter, either to Jeff Corwin or otherwise. So they decided in December 30th, 2007, to have a secret meeting. Now, I'd already filed my formal federal complaint 2 weeks earlier. So when I filed my federal complaint with the Secretary of Labor claiming whistleblower protection violations and other issues, and I even cited in the complaint letter to the Secretary of Labor the 2-inch water line, children's exposure to hazardous materials, economic discrimination. That was in my federal letter. In fact, the National Whistleblower Center in Washington, D.C. saw my letter. The head attorney at the National Whistleblower Center said that was an excellent letter, described the issue, you were prejudicial in your statements like that. He thought it was a great letter. Well, it got the secretary's attention because the Assistant Secretary of Labor wrote me a letter a week later. It came to my house. They turned it over to their OSHA office in San Francisco. Well, 4 months later, they flew out a federal investigator. That started an avalanche of issues. And what happened was, after I had filed, remember I had already filed a letter, I'd gone up the cascading chain of command to report these violations of law with no results. Even the city attorney failed to do anything. In fact, I was more shocked at that than anything. So they decided to reprisal. They wrote me up. They gave me a 7-page report of all the things I had done wrong with the city. And I remember they did this after I filed my federal complaint. And there was never any complaints against me during the whole tenure when I was at the city. I was only there 2 years. But there was no complaints, there was no issues. Now that was confirmed at the federal hearing on March 31st, 2010. I asked the HR Director, Jackie Walker, at the federal hearing on stand, in sworn testimony, have there been any complaints lodged against me when I was a city staffer? She said no. Well, the city had told the court earlier that I was a problem employee. How can you be a problem employee when there's no complaints? To the court's eye, it didn't make any sense, and I could see the judge's reaction wasn't too positive with her statements. So, we know now that this is all starting to come to better. I didn't find out a lot of this stuff until March 31st, 2010, that what I was actually fearing actually came to pass. What they did was they had a meeting about December 31st or January 31st, if I exactly, one of those 2 months. They had this secret meeting after I filed my letter to the FBI. They feared that I was an FBI agent evidently, because I had short hair and I acted differently than they did, and I was a law-abiding, strict, follow the rules. In fact, behind my desk was every rule and law there was that we had to follow, because I was the one in charge of learning the laws and training the staff. So I was the technical everything law. So they were afraid of me. So they had this secret meeting. They called 22 members of the water staff to a secret meeting at the Castle Rock pumping station, and they had it in the garage. We don't have meetings in garages. It's just not policy, and there's no room for 22 people. But they jammed them all in there, and I didn't find out about it until a week later when 2 staff members came up to me at my desk early in the morning when no one else was around. They told me about that meeting. They were visibly infuriated over the staff having this meeting. They said they conspired against you, Dean. They don't want us to call you out in the field. They don't want us to be near you and never tell you about anything that's going on in the field as far as breaks and leaks. We don't want you taking photographs anymore. So what they're doing is they're violating the Whistleblower Protection Act again. That's one of the parameters. Isolate the employee. That's pretty well known nationwide. So they're isolating me. They're following, it's to the letter what the Whistleblower Protection Act is supposed to be protecting against. And I knew it. The city has never had an employee fight with them before over the law. I'm the first evidently, I was told by staff. So I had a kind of a crossroads. What do I do? If I continue in the path I'm going, they're going to figure out a way to fire me. They already wrote me up a 7-page write-up, which every statement that was in the 7-page write-up they gave me, I disputed in later, because they wrote up so many things I didn't even know what happened. I mean, there was one letter that they wrote that I can't even believe that they wrote. And what I did for the government, because I was told the government doesn't know how to. I had to do a table of contents with all the stuff, dates and times, notified kids of wastewater, times, meeting notes, everything's categorized. I'm going to write a book, but I don't have the ending of the story yet. This is part of the story of this video. And so I have all the information. It's right here. It's all ready to print. I was hoping not to do this. And in March, Mr. Cooper, but the issue was, when I reported this stuff, no one seemed to care about the children. Again, it's the children. To me, it's still 6 in my craw. Well, what they did, they wrote me up. I think it was in March. They gave me a 7-page, or May. They gave me a 7-page write-up of all the things I did wrong, which of course I didn't do wrong, and I disputed them. And I said, you just wrote me up for reasons which we never cited and that you never told me about. So what you're doing, you're retaliating against my my complaints, and you're furthering your federal whistleblower protection case against you. And well, they didn't like that too much, so they used that fake write-up against me. And then they put me on, after I wrote to the city council, I thought, well, something must happen. One of these council members, one of these 7 council members must care. I even told the council about them not wanting to test water samples that I brought in from the Army base, not wanting to test any more samples from the poor area when I found that algae. I put that in the letter to the council. They all got a copy. I gave it to the clerk. The clerk confirmed they all got it. Within a few weeks, I was put on 9 days probation. So, what happened in Kingman? How did it get so wrong, basically? What else is it going to say? How did the council get so weak that they're afraid to take actions that would protect the public? Is it money? I believe it is. Most things that go wrong in small towns have to do with money. It's my belief that even though there was health and safety concerns, that's always secondary to money for some reason in our society. So I believe that $900,000 a year they've been siphoning out of the county, and that the distortion of facts about how much money we spend on operations was the core to the city's muffling of this whole thing. Now, they obviously permitted Mr. Kramer to write me up, put me on 9 days probation. Of course, I went through the 9 days flawlessly with no problems. I kept my mouth shut, stayed at my desk. In fact, I didn't know what to do at my desk for 8 hours a day for 90 days. I sat there. At the end of the 90 days, they called me into a meeting. They give me another 90-day notice. I said, how could you write me up when I didn't do anything? Well, we're writing you up for things happened before. So they're writing me up again for another 90 days for things that happened on that prior 90 days, way before the... I said, you can't do that. You can't bring things up from years ago and you're just trying to get me to quit. You're pressuring me to quit. I won't quit. I can't quit. I have a family. I'm the sole provider for a family. So, I said, I'm going to fight you guys. And he thought, the city manager, Jack Kramer, thought that was an insult to his power and authority. He had just been appointed as the city manager now. He just moved up because all this stuff that I discovered was muffled by city administrators because they want him to be city manager. In a real society of fairness, he would have never been the city manager. He didn't have the qualifications for it. He went to Kingman High School, which is an elite high school, but it doesn't have public administration classes. It doesn't have the advanced classes for financial management for a city. But they still made him, because I believe there is a can of worms they don't want to open. Mr. Kramer has been keeping that can of worms closed for years. I was the one trying to open the can of worms. Although I wasn't trying to open a can of worms about the money, I actually didn't care. It's pretty well known cities do this a lot. Divert money from what they're supposed to be doing. That's normal. But the public safety issue with the children just stuck in I just couldn't deal with it. And then when the state came out, and they actually confirmed what I had said, that children actually did get, it's in the state report. The state didn't do anything. And then I found out through staff that they weren't surprised that nothing happened. I said, well, why would you be not surprised? Because the director of the ADQ and assistant director and the flag staff is from Kingman, Arizona. And he handles this area. Matt Capalpi. So he wasn't inclined to make anything go wrong or bad in Save Kingman. And I just remembered what Mayor Byram had said in a city council meeting, that we had friends at ADQ, Arizona Department of Water Quality, referring to, I believe, what Mr. Capalpi. So as you have friends at high levels, guess what? Laws don't get enforced. And that's what happened. So although the ADQ director himself, Mr. Owen, knew nothing about this, and I never actually wrote a letter to him directly, the other assistant director, I forgot his name at this time, but the other assistant director was also from Kingman. So we have two people who actually run ADQ overseeing Kingman, their hometown. All friends. Some of them actually, Matt, I believe, belong to the Chamber of Commerce in Kingman. Total conflict of interest. So we have a state, which I love Arizona because Arizona has the capacity to meet with your elected leaders, where in California,